Revenge with Karen. Danielle knew something was off when Derek left a pink post-it on her monitor that said, Lunch W/new client. Smiling face with smiling eyes, and she hadn't scheduled a client lunch in over a week. Derek couldn't negotiate a vending machine, let alone represent them to a Fortune 100. Yet here he was, scribbling smiley faces like this was a damn sorority bake sale. She peeled it off, dropped it into her coffee, and kept typing. 3 minutes later, legal pinged her in a panic. One of the NDAs for a multi-million-dollar AI defense contract had been submitted without the classified annex. Danielle didn't ask who screwed it, she just fixed it. Updated the draft, looped in the general counsel, then triple-blind BCC'd herself in case anyone got amnesia about who saved the day. Again, no thank you, no good catch. Just silence, followed by a Slack from Derek. Client says we're good to go. Party popper, she stared at it, expressionless. The deal wasn't even cleared yet. She wasn't angry. Not really. Just tired. Tired in the way drywall gets tired, still holding the house up, but sagging behind the paint. 8 years in strategic partnerships, and she still had to remind the new hires not to CC external contacts on internal threads. She carried the company's relationship portfolio like a ghostly Sherpa, silent, invisible, and somehow still the first to get blame when things cracked. And look, before we go any further, real quick, you're part of that 97% listening without hitting subscribe or tapping the like button. Don't worry, we ain't judging. But if Danielle can ghost fix a $30M deal without blinking, you can tap that thumb and show some love. It actually means a hell of a lot to the crew bringing you these stories. Cool, cool. Now back to the madness. Danielle's day was a loop of quiet saves. She stepped out of a call with procurement to intercept a courier holding sensitive prototype blueprints that were supposed to be encrypted and shipped digitally, not biked across downtown in a sandwich bag. He talked down a client, threatening to pivot to a competitor because someone on Derek's welcome call accidentally promised 6 months of free support. Danielle patched that hole by escalating a trial extension offer we didn't actually offer, then locked the CRM so only she could edit it again. In the boardroom, she was a folding chair, always present, always unacknowledged, but God forbid she not be there when shit hit the fan. He didn't wear the flashy blazers or toss out buzzwords like Juliet, the CFO, Juliet who hadn't negotiated a deal in 10 years, but still claimed credit when Danielle's groundwork landed a Japanese telecom contract last quarter. No, Danielle preferred the background. Controlled, cool, calculated, until Juliet's eyes started wandering toward Derek like he was a centerpiece at a corporate baby shower. And that's when the tremors began. Quiet at first, growing. Danielle noticed Derek now got invited to meetings she used to run. His name was floated in project threads she'd opened. She even caught him using her talking points badly on a call with a longtime client who emailed Danielle afterward and asked, "Did we downgrade?" She laughed for the first time that week. A real one. But beneath it, a tectonic plate shifted. Because ghosts don't like being seen unless they want to haunt. Eric's promotion email hit inboxes at 9:01 a.m. sharp. Subject line: Introducing our new client liaison, Derek Tate, complete with a professional headshot that looked like it was cropped from a Hugo Boss ad. Collared shirt open just enough to say approachable, 5 o'clock shadow, groomed by what had to be a paid stylist, and eyes so blank you could project PowerPoints on them. Danielle didn't open the email. She didn't need to. He was in the building when the photo shoot happened. He'd been prancing around in 3 different outfits asking which tie popped on camera. At 9:08 a.m., her manager forwarded the announcement with a single line, loop Derek into anything client-facing going forward. THX, no punctuation. Just a shove into the babysitting pool. By noon, Derek had already scheduled a sync to strategize synergy touchpoints, which was code for explain things to me like I'm a Labrador wearing a Bluetooth headset. She sat through 40 minutes of him misusing terms like cap table and vertical integration, while casually name-dropping his uncle, the CEO, as if Danielle didn't already know who pulled the strings on his promotion. Then came Juliet. Juliet always floated around like she was allergic to eye contact, immaculate hair, heels clicking like a threat. This time she stopped just long enough by Danielle's desk to deliver her trademark sugar-coated knife. We need fresh faces, Danielle. Legacy people can slow deals down. And just like that, 8 years of loyalty was dismissed like an expired gym membership. Danielle blinked. You mean people who can read a contract without confusing net revenue with revenue net of losses? Juliet's smile tightened. We all have different strengths. That afternoon, new newsletter dropped. Full color, glossy PDF featuring Derek again, this time under the headline, Bringing Modern Energy to Client Relations. He was pictured shaking hands with a VP from a company Danielle had onboarded last year, whose CEO only takes meetings with Danielle directly. Danielle clicked archive. Derek walked by her office later, holding a smoothie and grinning like a man who just discovered LinkedIn Premium. Yo, D, you see the newsletter. Crazy, right? They used the shot I didn't even think they'd pick. She didn't look up. The one with your mouth closed. Smart choice. He didn't get the jab, just pointed finger guns and vanished. That night, Danielle stayed late alone as usual, reviewing the firm's active accounts, cross-checking, verifying which ones had clauses she'd brokered herself, which ones were locked to her internal credentials. She didn't move anything, not yet, but she made a new spreadsheet, aimed at legacy accounts, do not edit. She smiled to herself, just a flicker. The kind of smile fossils might have worn before being buried. Danielle found out she'd been left off the pipeline planning invite the same way she always found out anything in this place, accidentally. While searching her inbox for an old vendor contact, she stumbled on a forwarded thread titled, Q3 Client Roadmap, Final Attendees Confirmed. She scrolled. Derek was on it. It was Juliet. So was the innovation intern who still thought B2B meant back-to-back. Danielle's name? Absent, like she'd never existed. At 2:14 p.m., the glass-walled conference room flickered to life with the parade of blazers and bad decisions. Derek strolled in late, holding a kombucha like it was a microphone. Juliet gave him the seat at her right. Danielle watched through the window from her desk, sipping lukewarm coffee and chewing the inside of her cheek until it bled a little. By 4:00 p.m., the fires started. A long-standing logistics client, one of their biggest, pinged Danielle in a separate chat. Did we really agree to roll out the real-time tracking beta by August? That's insane. Danielle's heart didn't even twitch. Of course, Derek promised something they couldn't deliver. The beta wasn't even ready for internal testing, let alone a client pilot. She replied with a classic redirect. Let me look into that. Can you hold off until tomorrow before saying anything to legal? Then she opened the back channels. Quiet, surgical. She hit the product team first, confirmed beta status, still in pieces, extracted a confidential bug report, then called in a favor from the engineering lead, someone she once helped avoid a procurement audit. Within 45 minutes, Danielle had a timeline that disproved every word Derek had uttered in that meeting. But instead of correcting him publicly, or even letting Juliet know, she rerouted the error. A single sentence in a compliance memo, buried under 3 attachments, suggested the beta miscommunication had originated from a misread summary slide prepared by the CX analytics team. CX, the same rival team that once tried to poach Danielle's assistant. By morning, CX was doing damage control, while Derek posted a selfie on Slack with the caption, Crushing Q3 Strategy W/the Dream Team Briefcase Fire. Danielle didn't react, didn't roll her eyes, just opened her locked spreadsheet, legacy accounts, do not edit, and made a small annotation under the logistics clients column. Beta clause equals optional. Early exit trigger if Q3 deadline is unmet. She'd written that clause in 2 years ago, during a merger renegotiation Juliet never even read. With one click, Danielle drafted a silent override memo, unsigned, undated, untraceable unless you knew what keyword to search in their internal database. It sat there like a coiled wire. She didn't send it, not yet. But now, she knew, she could collapse Derek's entire Q3 victory lap without raising her voice, without lifting a finger. And no one would even know it was her, until it was too late. Quarterly strategy meeting was already a slow death by jargon, leverage, agility, pipeline visibility, when Juliet dropped the match. Derek had just finished reading bullet points off a slide he clearly hadn't written, mispronouncing omnichannel like it was a Scandinavian ski resort. He grinned like he'd nailed it. Juliet let the silence hang just long enough to remind everyone she had the biggest title in the room, and looked his way with a smirk that barely passed for polite. Well, she said, flipping a page in her printed notes with surgical flair, at least Derek brings value, even if it's just pretty decor. A few people chuckled, and then Juliet pivoted, knife in hand, smiling. Unlike some folks, he understands when to smile and when to shut up. Every chair shifted. A few throat clears. One cough that sounded more like regret. Danielle didn't blink, didn't flinch, just closed her laptop, slow and quiet, like sealing a casket. She didn't say a word, she didn't need to. Juliet had finally made the mistake of underestimating the wrong quiet woman. They went back to talking about international growth as if the air hadn't just turned acidic. Danielle sat still. Her face was calm, but inside something peeled back. Not snapped, peeled, like someone removing the last layer of insulation between ice and skin. It didn't burn, horrified. After the meeting, Derek bounded up to her with that same Gotham smoothie and said, "Hey, do you think I was too hard on the Asian numbers?" Juliet said I nailed the tone. Danielle looked at him like she was choosing which bone to break first. "You did great, Derek, really." That afternoon, he was supposed to finalize a multi-year service proposal with a logistics client they couldn't afford to lose. A client who, up to that point, had only trusted Danielle. She'd prepped the model, set the language, embedded all the protection clauses. All Derek had to do was read it back, smile, and not promise anything new. Instead, she watched calmly from her desk as he entered the wrong meeting room, brought the wrong version of the contract, and then, in a dazzling act of confidence-fueled ignorance, agreed to include reverse logistics support for free. Danielle saw the email trail come in. She did nothing. Let it simmer. Let him cook himself. The client pinged her on Signal that night. Was that real? Or was this part of a negotiation tactic I wasn't briefed on? Danielle replied, "Unfortunately, it was real. I'll escalate and course correct." And then, she didn't. She let Juliet sit with that. Let Derek smile his way into contractual breach. She opened the internal database again. Found the clause she'd quietly added last year. Retroactive support requires C-suite override plus budget tag allocation. No override, no budget tag. By end of week, the contract wouldn't be binding. But the damage? Oh, it would be very, very public. Juliet wanted smiles and silence. She was about to get both, permanently. It started with one unanswered email. Then two. Then an entire thread marked unread until the sender gave up and pinged Derek, responded with a thumbs-up emoji, and a 6-hour delay that cost them a call with a German distributor. Danielle wasn't being petty. She was being precise. She began extracting herself like a surgeon removing shrapnel with tweezers, slow, calculated, bloodless. She canceled all recurring syncs that didn't explicitly require her credentials. She turned off Slack notifications. Set her calendar to focus time 3 hours a day. When someone asked for access to a shared folder she managed, she'd accidentally send them the archived version with broken links and outdated decks. Nothing that could be called sabotage, just distance. And yet, the machine kept humming because her fingerprints were still on every gear. The marketing team didn't know their webinar schedule was built around client milestones Danielle had mapped out. Procurement didn't realize their budget estimates came from Danielle's handshake deals that hadn't hit Salesforce yet. Juliet certainly didn't know that 3 of their Q3 contracts included a clause Danielle inserted 2 years ago after a late-night NDA rewrite during a thunderstorm. That clause. It lived in a dormant partnership agreement with Ardentex, a mid-sized logistics conglomerate that powered over $30M of quarterly service flows. The clause read like legal wallpaper. Engagement continuation contingent on active liaison certification via internal strategic index, reviewed semi-annually. No one ever reviewed it, except Danielle. And now she updated it quietly, removed the active certification, changed the strategic index field from current to expired. She didn't even save it as a new version, just swapped the document in the backend repo that Juliet never knew existed. The effect wouldn't be immediate. But in 17 days, when the quarterly compliance ping hit Ardentex's system, it would auto-trigger a service freeze and a mandatory renegotiation. Without Danielle, that renegotiation would stall, trip over legalese, and fall directly into breach territory. Meanwhile, Danielle kept archiving. Not deleting, never deleting. He just salted the trail. File names like FINA L Final 2 revised temp June OLD draft multiplied across shared drives. She moved essential decks to outdated folders. She labeled one folder Juliet used this and filled it with slide decks so out of date they still had the 2019 logo. No one noticed. Juliet was too busy putting Derek on a LinkedIn Live panel. Derek was too busy asking if net 30 meant like 30 minutes or 30 business days. Danielle just watched and waited. Every empire collapses the same way, one forgotten foundation at a time. And Danielle had just started removing the screws. The cracks didn't scream, they whispered. It started with a client, low-key but high value, from an old legacy account Danielle had managed since before Juliet even was CFO. They were polite, East Coast formal, dangerously allergic to change. Their email was short, almost terse. Please confirm Danielle Foster will be on Thursday's strategy call, as discussed. Derek forwarded it to Juliet with the subject. LOL, they still think Danielle's running stuff face. With tears of joy, Juliet replied directly to the client. Danielle has transitioned into a back-office role. Derek and our new CX liaison will handle the call. No CC to Danielle. No heads up. Thursday came and went. No response. No call. No follow-up. By Monday, Danielle caught the first tremor in a Slack channel buried under the client retention group. Anyone have eyes on why Albright and Fair hasn't renewed yet? Contract was supposed to autopilot last Friday. Danielle sipped her tea, raspberry hibiscus. Still hot. She didn't answer. She watched. By Tuesday, 2 more clients, both in Danielle's old portfolio, went radio silent. No cancellations, just silence. That eerie, loaded absence where communication used to live. Then came the finance whisper. She overheard it in the break room between sips of burnt Keurig and awkward microwave noises. Juliet's already cutting Q4 projections by 5%, one of the FP and analysts muttered. She said it's a market correction, but the pipeline delta looks internal. Like, really internal. By Wednesday, someone from BizDev popped into Danielle's office like they were on a field trip to visit the crypt keeper. Hey Danielle, real quick. Any chance you could, take a quick look at the Albright account? There's some weird lag in their renewal portal and, I dunno, it's just acting funky. Danielle smiled, full teeth, Midwestern polite. Oh, I thought I was back office now. He blanched. I mean, just if you happen to have insight. She swiveled back to her monitor. See what I can dig up. She didn't dig. She already knew what was wrong. The renewal portal was linked to an access key authenticated through her strategic index credentials. Credentials that had technically been sunsetted the day she flipped that dormant clause. The clause Juliet never read. The clause that now required Danielle's reauthorization, on paper at least, for any rollover to go through. No Danielle, no rollover, no rollover, no cash. Danielle had built the thing so well, so clean, that no one could even tell what they were looking for. It wasn't sabotage. It was surgery. And now, the patient was bleeding out slowly, silently, right there in the open, while everyone tried to decide if the room smelled like blood or if they were just imagining it. Danielle walked past Juliet in the hallway that afternoon. Juliet didn't say a word, just looked up from her phone, then back down. Danielle didn't stop, but as she turned the corner, she allowed herself the smallest smile. It was happening, and no one even knew where to aim the blame. Juliet hit Danielle's door like a hurricane in heels. No knock, no pleasantries, just a full-body gust of panic wrapped in a Prada blazer and bad decisions. Her eyes were wild, rimmed red like she hadn't slept. Her phone was clutched in one fist, a printed spreadsheet in the other, color-coded with failure. Danielle didn't flinch. He didn't even look up right away. Just finished typing the final word in an email draft, clicked save, and swiveled slowly in her chair. Mint? She asked, holding out a small silver tin from her drawer like a peace offering at a mafia sit-down. Juliet blinked, thrown for a full second. Danielle, this isn't a joke. 2 renewals failed to process. Ardentex and Halbridge both triggered noncompliance flags this morning. They're locked out. Our pipeline's frozen. The hell happened? Danielle tapped the lid of the mint tin twice, then set it on the desk. I'd guess the clause index expired, along with the embedded credentials. Legacy contracts require strategic certification alignment. You'd know that if you'd read the appendices. Juliet's voice went up a register. We need those deals processed by EOD or investor guidance tanks. I've got legal breathing down my neck and ops flagging system errors they can't even trace. The only one who can fix this. Danielle leaned back, legs crossed, calm as a lake before a storm. I don't touch client-facing anymore, remember? That's Derek's territory now. Maybe he can synergy his way through clause renegotiation. Juliet's hand curled into a fist on the spreadsheet. Danielle continued, gentle as silk. And just to clarify, those deals were originally tied to my executive access channel. channel was phased out per your restructure initiative. I believe your exact words were, streamlining legacy dependencies. So, congrats, it's streamlined. Juliet's face collapsed into something between fury and dread. You're sabotaging us. Danielle smiled, not wide, just enough to say, you have no idea how deep this goes. No, I'm observing. Juliet tried one last lunge. You're still an employee. If I escalate this to the board, Danielle cut in, voice low and glacial. You'll be asked why you demoted the only person who knew where the keys were kept. And then why you let your nephew lock himself in the vault. Juliet stared. Danielle reached into her drawer again, not for documents, not for anything dramatic, just a travel-sized hand lotion. Lavender. She applied it slowly, deliberately, while Juliet's brain melted against the fire alarm in her skull. You'll want to call legal, Danielle said, almost gently, and maybe PR. Ardentex is already prepping their own statement. I'd recommend the word technical glitch. Always sounds softer than gross negligence. Juliet stood frozen for a beat too long, then stormed out, papers flapping, heels clipping like a countdown clock. Danielle capped her lotion. One more hinge off the door. The house was ready to fall. Subject line, deal hash 458 urgent review suggested body. Recommend reviewing deal hash 458 change log before Friday. That was it. No greeting, no signature. Just one line sent at 9:41 a.m. Danielle clicked send, closed her laptop, and slid it to the far corner of her desk like a completed puzzle. Then she waited, not impatiently, not with nerves. She sipped coffee from a chipped white mug she'd stolen from the CFO kitchenette 3 years ago. It said hash boss babe in fading pink cursive. Ironic then. Surgical now. She knew what the change log would reveal. 2 weeks ago, in a moment of arrogance or exhaustion, likely both, Juliet had signed off on a clause removal buried in the appendix of deal hash 458. That clause, obscure and unlabeled to the untrained eye, served as a failsafe that interconnected 3 major pipelines across supply chain, vendor lock-in, and data sovereignty. It was meant to never be touched without full legal review. But Juliet didn't read appendices. And Derek had suggested they simplify the legalese so clients didn't get overwhelmed. So Juliet, without looping in legal, greenlit a sunset on the clause. The implications were quiet until they weren't. Those 3 pipelines weren't just internal infrastructure. They were tied to active investor commitments, statements made during earnings calls, projections baked into Q4 guidance, and forward-looking statements filed with the SEC. Without that clause, it was a breach. A loud, public, disclosable breach. At 9:59 a.m., Danielle heard it. Where is she? The CEO's voice cracked through the hallway like a bat hitting glass. Someone sprinted past her office. Another froze, could feel the air pressure drop as the storm formed. At 10:02 a.m., her desk phone rang. She didn't answer. At 10:04, Juliet called her cell twice, then once more. Voicemail every time. Danielle stood, walked to the window, watched a pigeon land on the ledge like it too wanted a front row seat. Down the hall, the CEO's voice rose again. Who approved the clause removal? Who signed this? Someone tried to reply. He cut them off. Give me oversight. This is securities fraud. Do you understand that? At 10:07, the CEO's assistant appeared at Danielle's door, pale as printer paper. Danielle, he's asking for you. She smiled, soft and slow. Tell him I'm on my way. But she didn't move. She let the weight of it all sit there, not vengeance, not spite, just release. 8 years of being invisible, dismissed, repurposed like office furniture, gone in a single email. No fireworks, no revenge speech. Just the truth surfacing like rot in spring. She picked up her laptop again, gently, like handling a newborn or a bomb, and started writing her next message. To legal. The emergency meeting was scheduled for 7:30 a.m. No agenda, no coffee, no dignity. The conference room looked like a funeral parlor for bad decisions. Juliet's seat sat empty, her nameplate quietly removed. Word was she was on personal leave. Rumor swirled she'd been escorted out after an all-hands legal debrief that lasted 6 hours and ended with 2 outside auditors and 1 shredded NDA. Derek was there, pale as printer paper and visibly sweating through his button-down. When the CEO asked him to walk us through client assurance protocols, he launched into a word salad of buzzwords so thick you could serve it at Tech Expo. Mid-sentence, his nose started bleeding. He panicked, blotted it with his sleeve, kept talking. Everyone stared, half horrified, half hypnotized, as the blood soaked into his collar. It looked like his credibility was finally trying to escape through his face. The CEO didn't even acknowledge it. He was too busy apologizing. To the board, to legal, to the clients, to shareholders, and most notably to Danielle. "We made a critical error in internal transitions," he said, voice raw and face drawn. "Ms. Foster's operational oversight was far more integrated than we fully appreciated. Going forward, we're offering her full latitude and executive status to help correct course if she chooses to re-engage." Danielle sat still, didn't smile, didn't blink, just nodded once. Then closed her laptop, stood up, and walked out without a word. She didn't return to her desk. She didn't take the CEO's follow-up call. She didn't respond to the LinkedIn messages from board members, suddenly remembering her first name. Instead, she uploaded a single zipped file to the internal legal server. Legacy continuity Foster only zip in the notes field. She typed just one sentence. Decor breaks easily. Handle with care. Then she wiped her laptop, pulled the backup drive, slid her badge across the desk to the HR intern who didn't know where the bathroom was yet, and walked out. She stepped into the elevator. Alarms began blaring on the 12th floor. Not fire alarms, just lost signals. Automated compliance triggers for expired vendor flags. System alerts for broken contract links. A security warning blinking red because the strategic pipeline Danielle had architected and then personally unthreaded was now officially ownerless. She didn't flinch, didn't turn around. Danielle Foster walked into the parking garage like she'd just stepped out of a therapy session. By the time the board called her name again, she was already gone. No scorched earth, no trail, just silence, and behind her, 1,000 pieces of shattered decor. You're the real stars of the corporate jungle. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe, or I'll flick the switch on your old cubicle memories.